CEO followed a single dad after work. What she discovered changed everything. The dedicated employee Victoria Sterling adjusted her designer blazer as she walked through the executive floor of Sterling Pharmaceuticals, the billion-dollar company she'd built from the ground up. At 34, she was one of the youngest female CEOs in the industry, known for her brilliant mind and, if she was honest, her demanding standards. She stopped outside the research department, watching through the glass as her team worked. One person caught her attention. A man in his late 30s hunched over a microscope, scribbling notes with intense concentration even though it was past 7 p.m. "Who's that?" she asked her assistant, Michael. "That's Dr. James Sullivan. He's been with us for 6 months. Biochemistry PhD. Incredibly talented. His work on the new insulin delivery system is groundbreaking." Victoria nodded, filing the information away. She valued dedication, and Dr. Sullivan clearly had it in spades. Over the next few weeks, Victoria noticed a pattern. James was always the first to arrive and often the last to leave. But every day at exactly 5:30 p.m., he would rush out like the building was on fire, only to return an hour later and work until 9 or 10 p.m. It was unusual. Most dedicated employees worked straight through. The pattern intrigued her, and if Victoria was honest, it also irritated her slightly. What was so important that it interrupted his workflow? One Friday evening, Victoria made a decision that would change everything. She would follow him. At 5:28 p.m., Victoria positioned herself in the parking garage, ducking behind a concrete pillar like some sort of corporate spy. She felt ridiculous but also oddly excited. It had been years since she'd done anything spontaneous. James burst through the stairwell door at 5:32 p.m., practically running to his old Honda Civic. Victoria slipped into her Mercedes and followed at a safe distance, her heart pounding with a mixture of guilt and curiosity. He didn't go far, just 15 minutes to a modest neighborhood of small, well-maintained houses. He pulled into the driveway of a pale blue bungalow with a white picket fence and children's toys scattered in the yard. Before James even got out of the car, the front door flew open and a little girl, maybe 6 years old, came running out in rainbow overalls and a yellow shirt, her light brown hair flying behind her. "Daddy! Daddy! Daddy!" she shrieked with pure joy. James swept her up into his arms, spinning her around as she giggled uncontrollably. "Mia, I missed you so much. How was your day?" Victoria watched from down the street, something tight squeezing in her chest. An elderly woman appeared in the doorway, clearly the babysitter. "She's been asking about you all afternoon," James counting down the minutes. "Thanks, Mrs. Patterson. What do I owe you?" As they settled up, Victoria saw James pull out a wallet and count out bills carefully. Not the careless gesture of someone with money to spare, but the precise calculation of someone who had to make every dollar stretch. After the babysitter left, James took Mia inside. Victoria knew she should leave, should respect their privacy. But something kept her there. Through the large front window, curtains not yet drawn against the evening, she could see into their living room. It was modest but clean and filled with love. James sat on the floor with Mia, helping her with what looked like homework. Then they moved to the kitchen, where he made dinner, nothing fancy, just spaghetti. But Mia chatted animatedly the whole time, and James listened to every word like it was the most important thing in the world. After dinner they played a board game. Mia won, or maybe James let her win, and she jumped up and down with excitement. Then James checked her nebulizer. Victoria's medical knowledge recognized the device for asthma, and helped her with her treatment while reading her a story. By 6:45 p.m., James was tucking Mia into bed. Victoria saw him kiss her forehead, pull the blankets up to her chin, and leave a nightlight on as he quietly closed her door. He emerged from the house at 6:52 p.m., locking the door carefully and getting back in his car. Victoria followed him back to the office, her mind reeling. The investigation that night, Victoria sat in her penthouse apartment overlooking the city, unable to shake what she'd seen. She pulled up James Sullivan's employee file on her tablet. The facts painted a picture: PhD in biochemistry from Stanford, brilliant research credentials. But he'd taken a significant pay cut to work at her company 6 months ago. Previous employer, a prestigious research institute in Boston. Why leave a better paying job? Victoria did what she did best. She dug deeper. A few phone calls to contacts, some careful questions, and by midnight she had the story. James's wife had died 2 years ago from complications during childbirth with their daughter, Mia. James had been left to raise her alone while drowning in medical debt. He'd taken the job at Sterling Pharmaceuticals because it was the only position that offered both the flexibility he needed and health insurance that would cover Mia's asthma treatments. The reduced salary meant he couldn't afford full-time childcare. Mrs. Patterson, the neighbor, watched Mia after school, but James had to be home by 6:30 p.m. to relieve her because he couldn't afford to pay her for evening hours too. So every day, James sprinted home, spent precious time with his daughter, put her to bed, and then returned to work to make up the hours because he knew his job performance had to be exceptional. He couldn't afford to lose this position or the insurance that came with it. Victoria set down her tablet, a strange feeling washing over her. She'd built her entire life around the idea that dedication to work was paramount. She'd sacrificed relationships, family time, personal happiness, all in service of success. But James Sullivan was dedicated to something more important than any job, his daughter, and he was managing to be brilliant at both. The decision Monday morning, Victoria called an emergency meeting with her HR director and CFO. "I want to implement a new company policy," she announced. "Flexible working arrangements for all employees, particularly those with caregiving responsibilities." Her CFO frowned. "Victoria, we already have some flexibility." "Not enough. I want real flexibility. Remote work options, adjusted core hours, on-site childcare facilities. Whatever it takes to support our employees who are juggling work and family. That's going to be expensive," the CFO protested. "And worth every penny if it means we retain talented people like Dr. Sullivan, who might otherwise burn out or leave for companies that value work-life balance." She spent the next week putting together a comprehensive proposal. Then she called James into her office. He arrived looking nervous, probably terrified that the CEO personally requesting his presence meant something bad. "Dr. Sullivan, please sit," Victoria said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. "I wanted to discuss your work-life situation." James went pale. "If this is about my hours, I can explain. I always make up the time. I never miss deadlines." "I know," Victoria interrupted gently. "Your work is exceptional. That's not what this is about." She took a breath. "I'm going to be honest with you in a way that might seem intrusive, but I hope you'll understand my intentions. I followed you home last Friday." James's eyes went wide. "You, what?" "I know. It was inappropriate, and I apologize. But I needed to understand why you left every day at 5:30 and returned. What I saw was a dedicated father doing everything possible to care for his daughter while also excelling at his job." James looked like he didn't know whether to be angry or terrified. "Miss Sterling, I'm implementing a new company-wide policy for flexible working arrangements. But more specifically for you, effective immediately, I'm approving a schedule where you work from home 3 days a week. You'll come into the lab only when absolutely necessary for hands-on research. Your salary is being increased by 30% to match what someone of your qualifications should be earning. And we're expanding our health insurance to cover 100% of dependent care, including Mia's asthma treatments." James stared at her, mouth open. I don't understand. Why would you do this?" Victoria leaned back in her chair. "Because I've spent my entire adult life believing that success meant sacrificing everything else. I've built this company into a powerhouse, but I'm 34 years old and I have no family, no close friends, and I can't remember the last time I did something just because it brought me joy. I look at you, and I see someone who's managed to maintain what matters while still being brilliant at what you do. That's the kind of employee I want to support. That's the kind of company I want to build. The transformation, the changes didn't happen overnight, but they happened." Sterling Pharmaceuticals became known as one of the most family-friendly companies in the industry. Employee retention skyrocketed. Productivity increased. Victoria discovered that people who felt supported in their personal lives brought more creativity, dedication, and loyalty to their work. 3 months after implementing the changes, Victoria did something she'd never done before. She left work at 5:30 p.m. She drove to James's house, where she'd been invited for dinner. It had started as a thank you gesture from James, but over the weeks, a genuine friendship had formed. James and Mia had become the family. Victoria never knew she was missing. When she arrived, Mia ran to greet her. Miss Victoria, Daddy made lasagna and I helped. Did you? I bet it's going to be the best lasagna I've ever tasted. Over dinner, Mia chattered about her day at school, showed Victoria her drawings, and insisted on teaching her a complicated hand-clapping game. James watched with a soft smile, occasionally catching Victoria's eye. You're good with her, he said later, as they did dishes while Mia watched cartoons. She's easy to be good with. She's wonderful. She is, James agreed. I think she's been missing female influence in her life. Since her mom. I've been missing family influence in mine, Victoria admitted. I didn't realize how much until I met you two. The revelation 6 months after Victoria first followed James home, she stood in front of her company at the annual all-to-hands meeting. I want to share something personal, she began. For years, I believed that being a good CEO meant being ruthless about productivity, about hours worked, about dedication to the job above all else. I was wrong. She clicked to a slide showing employee satisfaction and productivity metrics, both significantly up since the policy changes. This company is stronger now than it's ever been. Not because we're working longer hours, but because we're working smarter. Because we've created an environment where people can bring their whole selves to work, as parents, as caregivers, as human beings with lives and loves outside these walls. She paused. I learned this lesson from one of our researchers who taught me that dedication to family and dedication to excellence aren't mutually exclusive. In fact, they enhance each other. After the meeting, James approached her. Thank you for the shout-out, and for everything. Thank you, Victoria replied. For showing me there's more to life than quarterly earnings. Mia appeared beside her father, tugging on Victoria's sleeve. Miss Victoria, are you coming to my school play next week? Victoria knelt down to Mia's level. Wouldn't miss it for the world, sweetheart. As she watched James and Mia leave hand in hand, Victoria felt something she hadn't felt in years: contentment. Not the adrenaline rush of closing a big deal or the satisfaction of hitting targets, but the quiet, deep contentment of knowing she was living a life that mattered beyond balance sheets and board meetings. 1 year later, Victoria stood at the back of the small church, watching James walk Mia down the aisle to where her first-grade teacher waited. It was Mia's school recognition ceremony, and Victoria had blocked off her entire afternoon to be there. Afterward, the three of them went for ice cream, a Tuesday afternoon tradition they'd started. I have news, Victoria announced as they sat at the picnic tables outside the ice cream shop. James raised an eyebrow. Good news, or Victoria's planning something dramatic news? A little of both. I'm stepping back from day-to-day operations, promoting Marcus Chen to CEO while I move to executive chair. I'll still be involved in strategy, but I want more time for life. Victoria, that's amazing, James said, genuinely pleased. I'm also moving. To this neighborhood, actually. That blue house 2 doors down from you just went on the market. Mia's eyes went huge. Really? You're going to be our neighbor? If that's okay with you two. Mia launched herself at Victoria in a sticky ice cream-covered hug. It's the best thing ever. James met Victoria's eyes over Mia's head, and something passed between them. Gratitude, friendship, and maybe the beginning of something more. You know, James said softly, when I took this job, I thought I was just trying to survive, to keep my head above water and give Mia what she needed. I never imagined I'd end up here, with a boss who became a friend, with a company that actually values family, with a life that feels whole again. I followed you home one day because I was curious about an employee's strange schedule, Victoria said. What I discovered was that I'd been living half a life. You and Mia taught me what really matters. Mia, blissfully unaware of the adult conversation, was already planning Victoria's housewarming party, complete with rainbow decorations and ice cream cake. As the three of them walked home in the golden afternoon light, Victoria reflected on how a single impulsive decision, following an employee to discover his secret, had led to the complete transformation of her company, her values, and her life. Sometimes the best business decisions have nothing to do with profit margins, and everything to do with understanding that behind every employee is a human being with a story worth knowing and a life worth supporting. And sometimes, the family you build is even more precious than the empire you create. The end, remember, success isn't measured only in dollars and promotions. Sometimes the greatest achievement is creating a life and a company that values what truly matters.